Hello, everybody. Welcome to our birthday celebration. So fun to watch you all entering into this Zoom space with us. Thank you so much for joining us on this fine Friday afternoon. Just taking a moment while you all enter into our party Zoom. Hello. We're so glad you're all here. I think I'll go ahead and get started with today's program. Welcome everyone to our very special celebration of Emily Dickinson's 191st birthday. It is wonderful to be here with each and every one of you. My name is Brooke Steinhauser. I'm the program director at the Emily Dickinson Museum. And I'm coming to you today from Amherst, Massachusetts, where just yesterday we had our very first snowfall of the season. When I see the houses at the museum topped with a fresh coating and the poet's garden all shrouded in white, it brings to mind any number of Dickinson's very fine snow poems. So I thought I would take a moment to just share this one with you now. Like brooms of steel, the snow and wind had swept the winter street. The house was hooked. The sun sent out faint deputies of heat. Where rode the bird, the silence tied his ample plodding steed. The apple in the cellar snug was all the one that played. So I hope wherever you are today that you are as snug as that apple in the cellar. That same winter-swept street and the cozy house described here is the setting for our birthday celebration. The poet was born at this family homestead on December 10th, 1830 at about 5 o'clock in the morning, when Emily Norcross Dickinson and her husband Edward Dickinson welcomed their middle child, Emily Elizabeth Dickinson, into the world. And now 191 years later, the homestead and the evergreens, the two Dickinson houses comprising the museum, still stand. And Emily Dickinson herself is known and cherished the world over as one of the finest poets in literary history. And proving that point, you all who are here to celebrate with us today, you have registered from over 60 countries, and there are over 1,600 of you who have wanted to join in this celebration. So we at the museum could not be any prouder to be connecting with you all today. If you'd like, feel free to chime in the chat now and tell us what part of the world you're tuning in from today, or this morning, or this evening, wherever you may be. Hello from Peru and Canada, Argentina, Spain, Costa Rica, Mexico. Oh my gosh, there are so many of you. Turkey, Northern Ireland, Greece. I see some Massachusetts folks, India, Philippines. It's just incredible. This is what a powerful testament this is to see all of you uniting from around the world. Thank you for being with us. So as you may know, the museum has been closed since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're currently undertaking our most ambitious restoration project yet over at the homestead. So if we were standing together on that wintry street that Dickinson described in her poem today, we would see the bustle of activity at the homestead, where plasterers are mixing their plaster, builders are building, and architectural discoveries are being made every day. But for this ongoing work, we would eat cake together in the homestead dining room today. Perhaps we would take a stroll across the newly restored path, just wide enough for two who love, and we might pop into the Evergreens, which was the home of Austin and Susan Dickinson, to sit by the Christmas tree and tell the stories of those who brought Dickinson's poetry to the world after her death in 1886. So while we patiently await the conclusion of this restoration, today we hope to give you a sense of all that lies in store for you when we reopen the museum in late spring of 2022. And that means it's almost time for us to share a very exciting announcement about the Apple TV hit show, Dickinson. Now, what do those two things have to do with each other? Well, you're about to find out. So stay tuned. But before we do, we want to hear from you out there. We would love to have you answer a poll question for us. So we're going to put that up on your screen. And we're going to circle back to your answers in a moment. The question is, so we've got Dickinson's own poems and letters. We have contemporary interpretations like Apple TV's Dickinson. We have an audience that is inspired. All of you are inspired by a wealth of Dickinson related material. So we would love for you to tell us, what is it that you're most enjoying right now or have enjoyed? Is it her poems? Is it her letters? Have you really enjoyed Dickinson's poems being set to music? Or perhaps you read a biography recently, or you've enjoyed a theatrical production, or you're really into these film representations of Emily Dickinson. Let us know in the poll, and we'll circle back to that in a minute. So while you're answering that question, I'm going to welcome Emily Dickinson Museum Executive Director Jane Wall to join us, because I can't wait a moment longer, I'm sure Jane can't, to share our good news with you. So over to you, Jane.
Thanks so much, Brooke. Welcome all, and happy birthday, Emily Dickinson. Because the Dickinson homestead is in the throes of an extensive restoration, as Brooke just described, I'm just next door at the Evergreens, which was the home of the poet's brother Austin and sister-in-law Susan and their children. Perhaps you can see behind me that the Evergreens is in an unusual state of preservation, having been lived in by the Dickinsons and their heirs, who kept it as it was at the end of the 19th century. So this house is just thick with the atmosphere of family relationships, the whispers of the personal letters and poems exchanged between Emily and Susan, and remnants of the sparkling social and literary gatherings held here. It's a kind of vault of memory and poetry, a place that witnessed important chapters in the story of how Dickinson's poetry found its place in the world after her death in 1886. Well, not to keep you waiting, from here, it's my great pleasure to share some extraordinary news with you. Our friends over at Apple TV and wiip Productions, these are the engines behind the breakout TV show Dickinson, have made a tremendous gift to the Emily Dickinson Museum of hundreds of set pieces, costumes, and objects, props used in the show. So let me explain a little bit about just how thoughtful and important this gift is. It's made up of actual 19th century furniture and objects acquired by the show to present as authentically as possible the true environments of the Dickinson residences, as well as the styles and actual construction of 19th century clothing worn by the actors. As you know, Dickinson is a TV series created by Elena Smith that audaciously explores how rebellious young poet Emily Dickinson wrestled with, and in some cases overcame, the 19th century constraints of gender, family, and society. The series is a coming-of-age story that finds Emily to be the unexpected hero for new generations today. The series stars Haley Steinfeld, Toby Huss, Ella Hunt, Jane Krakowski, and has included guest appearances from Wiz Khalifa, John Mulaney, Zasha Mamet, and Nick Kroll. The show is now in its third and final season, all available on Apple TV, with the upcoming series finale falling on Christmas Eve in just 2 weeks. From the beginning, the Dickinson Show sought out our Emily Dickinson Museum resources and advice. During pre-production, those responsible for sets and furnishings and costumes visited the museum here in Amherst, Massachusetts, to study the architecture and the floor plans and furnishings of the two homes. The principal actors toured the museum as they worked on understanding and inhabiting the personalities and characteristics of members of the Dickinson family and their circle. And as the series unfolded, researchers and production staff reached out to us several times to track down details of familial relationships and friendships and acquaintances, the appearance of the town of Amherst then and after then, and the gardens and grounds. So we had a particularly enjoyable and rewarding time helping to track down one special item about which I'll say no more right now, but you'll be able to see it on Christmas Eve. One of the great things about the gift of objects to the museum is that They're all authentic 19th century items, true to the time period, and appropriate to the Dickinson residences, and sourced in the same ways that the museum would do when looking for appropriate furnishings for spaces where Dickinson family objects are lacking. While these items from the show don't have Dickinson provenance, they will augment our originals to imbue the rooms of the museum with the same kind of texture and life and immersive power that one wants to experience in Emily Dickinson's home. When the museum reopens, you'll enjoy more fully furnished spaces that convey with more substance and texture what daily life at the homestead and the Evergreens was like. We expect this gift will also inspire future programming with the creative team behind the Dickinson show, perhaps an exhibition of costumes inside the historic houses, screenings of the show in the garden, perhaps talks by cast and production team members. I want to share with you the words of our partner and Dickinson creator, Elena Smith, who can't be with us here in person today, but this is what she said. I can't imagine a more meaningful conclusion to the journey of making Dickinson than giving this gift to the Dickinson Museum. It's the greatest end to the story I wanted to tell, and makes me feel so proud that these pieces of our production will contribute to Emily's legacy and help the museum in its mission of deepening scholarly and historic preservation. I love that the show was able to introduce Emily to new generations around the globe, and that it will continue to help make the museum a place of even more international prominence. Just to know that in 20 years, fans can come to the museum and see a lasting piece of the Dickinson show, of the Dickinson world we built, is amazing to me. It makes my heart sing. Absolutely, Elena, and thank you. The Dickinson show and the museum really share the same goal of amplifying Emily Dickinson's powerful and revolutionary poetic voice, and we're thrilled that the show has introduced so many to that voice. This tremendous gift is inspired by Dickinson's poetic legacy, one that generated the idea of the show in the first place. Her ever-present voice in our world today is always fresh and compelling, always insistent and enduring, not only here at her home in Amherst, but as it should throughout the world and with you. Again, thank you to Apple TV, to wiip Productions, to our guests at today's birthday party, and to all of you who are here to celebrate Emily Dickinson together.
Well, thank you so much, Jane, and the cat's out of the bag. It's very exciting for all of us, and thank you all for your words of support about this in the chat. We're so excited to be sharing this moment with you. And speaking of sharing, I'd like to share the results of our poll. So you can take a look and see. Overwhelmingly, you all are here for the poetry, and of course, we love that. This was a multiple choice option, so we also have an amazing 61% of you who have really been enjoying Apple TV's Dickinson, particularly as a way to connect with the poet. And I think those two as our sort of leading areas makes a lot of sense. One of the triumphs of the show is the way that it centers Dickinson's poems, particularly, sort of focusing on one in each episode. So thanks so much for taking that poll. And now, as Jane has said, we've been very fortunate to get to know members of the production team at Apple TV's Dickinson, including Marina Parker, set decorator, and Jennifer Moeller, a costume designer. So we sat down with them to ask them some questions about the making of the show and the sets and the costumes that have now come to us at the Emily Dickinson Museum. So let's hear from them now.
My name is Marina Parker, and I was the set decorator for Dickinson for all 3 seasons.
With such a massive undertaking, how did you begin to approach your work? And what were the most formative resources for you in the production process?
It was a huge undertaking for me. I personally had never worked in the 1850s period before this project. In particular, the 1850s are difficult because it predates photography. So there's not really photographic evidence of what interior spaces looked like. So there were three main approaches that we used in terms of research. We looked to paintings for clues a lot. We visited museums, specifically the Emily Dickinson Museum. Thirdly, we sought out people who were experts in the decorative arts fields, or who had spent were enthusiasts and incredibly knowledgeable about whether it was rugs or drapery or wallpaper, or there's a father-son duo who specialize in wood burning stoves and have like fields of wood burning stoves and would clean them up for us. And I think that all three of those tactics were invaluable. Specialists or experts in their field can feel intimidating, but I think in actuality, we found that they were so enthusiastic about their love of whatever it was, and thrilled that someone was interested, that we wanted to know more about it. My initial visit to the Emily Dickinson Museum was, I think my expectations were high. I was hoping that the museum would be like a Rosetta Stone for discovering Emily's world, and or what that material world looked like. And I believe it was slightly disappointing to me to discover that as a direct result of her being so anonymous and unknown and unappreciated during her lifetime, the house had been sold after she died. Other people had moved in, and it physically felt like she was being erased from history. You know, a lot of the rooms are empty, which is something that you're very much, which is why it's so exciting now that you're undertaking this project of breathing life back into the house. But it was still very helpful. Definitely from an architectural standpoint, I think you provided us with blueprints that really helped the art director and the production designer. But you had carefully and lovingly restored the bedroom, and that was very helpful. And there were a lot of surprises there for me.
What would you say was the most memorable space for you to work on, and why was that?
Possibly Emily's room, because it is the central thesis of the show, you know, the axis around which the entire show revolves. And it felt really important to get that right. It also felt like we were opened up to criticism there the most if we got it wrong. When I first came to the Emily Dickinson Museum, and it was the first thing that we did. Lauren Weeks, the original the production designer from season 1, CJ, the art director from season 1, Diana, the producer, and I came up. And the thing that was so surprising, that took me completely by surprise, was her desk. It's like 17 inches by 17 inches. I think any visitor who comes to the museum will be struck by that. I mean, it's not really a desk, right? It's a one-drawer stand. It's a nightstand. Set dressers would constantly mix up her bedside table and her desk because they're the same. You know, they're the same scale, they're the same function.
Yeah, recently I was with someone who was in her bedroom for the first time, and they were looking around in the room and asked, well, where's the desk? And well, it's right there. It's the most important item in the room, and there it is, because it just looks like a diminutive piece of occasional furniture. Yeah.
Exactly. And by contrast, Edward Dickinson, her father, downstairs has this sprawling desk that's incredibly intricate and ornate, right?
Right.
Because he was a man and his work was important. But even male contemporary authors I have found of hers, Herman Melville, Emerson, Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, they had desks. Louisa May Alcott also had a very small makeshift space. And so it felt like this, it was a detail that was surprising to me. It felt very important for us to get that right, because it felt symbolically important. It felt like a subtle way. We weren't trying to hit anyone over the head with this, but a subtle, truthful way to show just how hard women had to work to create anything artistic or intellectual. And there are echoes of that inherent disparity today still, right? Very much so. We've made progress, but women have to fight incredibly hard to be heard and to be seen and to be recognized and to be afforded opportunities. And so I think that surprising detail that we came across at the Dickinson Museum, we really tried to be faithful to that because it felt like such a telling, revealing detail about her life and the time that she lived in and the struggle to be heard. I hope that this show, the renovations to the museum, Emily's work, Elena's work, that it might resonate with some people somewhere and be, an affirmation or an encouragement to people who don't feel seen or heard necessarily, or don't feel appreciated or valued, that they feel encouragement and to know that their voice is important, their perspective is important, their being in the world is meaningful, and to hopefully have faith to chase after their callings.
So I wonder if you could tell us what it's like set out to source an entire film set's worth of and real 19th century objects and how you went about doing that.
One of the first things that I did was go to Brimfield, which is this, I was just telling you, it's like the Super Bowl of flea markets. It's unimaginably huge football fields worth of crowded vendors with Victorian, with brown furniture, with crockery, with textiles. And it was a very helpful way for me to get my feet wet and meet a ton of vendors at once, very efficiently, see what people had, get their business cards. It felt important to me, though, as much as possible, to ground the story in sets that were pretty period accurate, that would become a foil against which these other liberties could play. And in that way, I think Elena once described it as creating this Victorian fun house that allowed us to examine contemporary society, but it's clear that this is happening in the 1850s, through the costumes, through the sets. Like, I think I had an abstract idea of puritanical New England being really stark and devoid of color and devoid of pattern. And it turns out that's not true at all. The spaces were quite opulent and huge patterns in the wallpaper, huge patterns in the carpets. And because the story that Elena wrote was also taking these risks and reimagining the way that we perceive Emily Dickinson, it was fun for us to jump headlong into these surprising discoveries about what the environments looked like.
So we're trying to do with our restoration much the same thing to bring more life, more color, more texture, more evidence of daily life back into the homestead. I was graciously invited to come spend some time with you on the sets and in the warehouse, and with your help was invited to select some objects that have now come to the museum. And there are a couple of real standout moments or items in my mind's eye, but one of my favorite pieces was this crazy ophthalmological instrument from season 2, when Emily goes to see the eye doctor in Boston.
It's fantastic because it really is ophthalmologic equipment from that era. Back to Brimfield, I met an antiques dealer there named David Rose Antiques, from Massachusetts, born and raised there, incredibly knowledgeable about Victorian antiques and New England. And so I would run down things that were coming up. And I said, we have an ophthalmologic set coming up. What can you find? And we had a lot of irons in the fire, obviously, in terms of our searches, but he came back he was like, what do you think about this huge, terrifying that you put your chin into it, and it's like a hypnotic, terrifying device. And it was perfect. It was perfect. It was exactly what we needed, even though we didn't know that it was what we needed.
We're just so delighted to have received virtually the entire intact kitchen set from the Dickinson Show's homestead, so which will find its place in Emily Dickinson's homestead. So I wonder if you could tell me about your approach to decorating that space for the show.
The kitchen was really fun because there was a lot of room for layers there. The Dickinson family did lose the house at some point when Emily was a child, which is alluded to in the story. They had to move out for a period of time. Edward was able to make enough money to buy back the homestead. I think he had a lot to prove there in terms of reinstating the family dignity and stature. It was kind of a nice opportunity for us to really try to rise to the occasion as he would have, to make it grand, but also to have the latest innovations in terms of technology. And so there's this stove that would have been like pretty cutting edge. That is the centerpiece of that kitchen. Antique Stove Hospital has a collection of these stoves, and they refurbished it for us. There's also this big farm table and shaker chairs. So we tried very hard to have to research and find intricate furniture that still had clean lines throughout the house, but a space like the kitchen is a space where we could have, it's a more functional space. It's less for presentation, it's less formal, it's not for entertaining. And so the shaker chairs and farm table, they're utilitarian and they felt really at home in the kitchen. And it was a nice way to kind of contrast these the spaces in the house that felt realistic.
Yeah, that range of utilitarian to elegant, I think, really is important, especially in a, kind of provincial, small New England community. And I think it was just extraordinarily well done.
I get the impression that Edward was a bit of he was very status oriented, I think. As an aspiring politician, I get the sense that impressions really mattered to him. Richard Nylander, that wallpaper expert, he turned us on to ashlar wallpapers in the hallway. I guess it was a convention to have these wallpapers that look like stone, but it's so weird. It's so weird by contemporary standards. It doesn't look like stone. It's not fooling anybody. It looks like wallpaper. And so it's kind of surreal. But he said that the intention really was to intimidate visitors. It was to appear cold and formal, and that was impressive. So diving into those details about the way people perceived decoration and the way to present these various spaces was really, really fascinating. I mean, we really took the research seriously, but we also got very lucky in a lot of ways. We had a very talented team of people working together, and the resources of the museum and a wealth of paintings and various experts really all were such incredible supports. I am so honored and excited to be included in this project undertaking. It's such an honor that the work that we've done meets your approval and feels like it can be have renewed life in the space of the museum. And I just was looking through my library, and one of the books that I have is a book by Annie Leibovitz, Pilgrimage. Where she visits these various culturally important sites throughout America. And I think the very first place that she visited was the Emily Dickinson Museum. And one of the things that she said in the foreword was that this journey that she went on, this personal journey, was an exercise in renewal, and it taught her to see again. And it was such a lovely sentiment, but it also just made me so excited that you guys are taking on this undertaking to really revive and flesh out this Emily Dickinson space for generations of viewers to come.
I'm Jennifer Muller. I'm the costume designer for seasons 2 and 3 of Dickinson.
One of the most striking elements of the show is probably the way that the contemporary dialogue and the soundtrack juxtapose with very highly researched, very authentic period finishes, both for the sets and the costumes. So how did you approach your design process, and what were some of the most useful resources for you while you were doing that research?
I feel like when the viewer sees the show, I want them to walk away thinking that they've seen sort of real and accurate clothing, which I think from what you're saying, we've sort of done, which is exciting. But I do take a fair number of liberties when I'm putting things together, because I do want things to sort of appeal to the contemporary eye. So I often like simplify things or a little bit, or in the case of this last season, like the trims can be a little heavy. So I definitely lighten things up a little bit. But again, the goal is to make them feel like real clothes. And to do that, I always start with what's real. What was there? What did they really wear? What were the underpinnings like? You have to start from the inside out. And if you don't get that underwear right, then the dress doesn't sit properly. So we do sort of start with what's real. And to do that, I did a number of things. One is, this is a time when photography in America really starts to take off, right? There's the invention of the daguerreotype, which is a photograph process which was a little more accessible. More people were able to have photographs taken, not just the wealthy. So there's an amazing source right there of real people wearing real clothes. We purchase real antique clothing that we sort of open up and look on the inside and see how are the seams done, and how are the closure, what kind of closures do they use, and we reference those for pattern pieces, taking patterns from them. I definitely came and checked out the museum. I don't know, sort of commune with Emily's spirit a little bit. But then I did go over to Historic Deerfield. They have a number of pieces there on display, real clothes from menswear and women's wear. And I did spend some time looking at that. And in their collection, they have an online collection. So I looked there some just to sort of get an idea of what was happening in Western Massachusetts at the time. Final thing, and this really sort of came more into play in season 2, is I looked at a lot of the fashion plates from Godey's ladies book, which was, I think it was like the most popular magazine just before the Civil War. It was a ladies magazine. And those were those fashion plates coming from Europe. A lot of them were the things that I looked at a lot for Sue's looks in season 2.
All that research that you did and ultimately the designs that you made, what were your hopes for the way that wardrobe would help to tell the story that the show is telling?
A lot of decisions, almost every decision is always driven by what's going to push the story forward and what's going to tell us what we need to learn about the characters. And for Dickinson, and for each episode, I always start with the poem that's attached to the episode. Every episode has a particular poem of Emily's. I'm gonna start there, and then I start with Emily, what Emily's wearing. I use this example quite a bit because I think it's the most clear, but I often will try to tie what she's wearing to that poem. For example, in season 2, there's the Daisy follows soft the sun. And we wanted to find something that really popped against all that green, but also something that referenced that poem. So she ended up wearing this sort of yellow floral. So I always start there with the poem and with Emily, and then I sort of build the rest of the world around her. Emily takes a different approach to her work every season. Season 1, she's trying to figure out if she should be a poet. Season 2, she's struggling with fame. Season 3, she's trying to find her place, what her place is in the world, and what her poems mean in the context of the Civil War. So I'm always trying to show her sort of maturing from season to season. And then from season to season, there's characters that have sort of pretty significant changes. Sue, from season 1 to season 2, she goes from this orphan with only a couple of black dresses to this, glamorous socialite who never wears the same thing twice. And for from season 2 to 3 for Austin, he goes from good old Austin to sort of drunk, alcoholic, troubled playboy Austin.
Well, I imagine it is very difficult to choose when you have produced 3 seasons worth of beautiful designs. But do you have sort of a favorite costume moment from the show?
I will say that this last season 3, has a bunch of things that are have been really memorable and fun, particularly with Emily. like the 4th episode has her in this sort of blue-gray, almost chambray dress. And when she goes into her like fantasy life, fantasy of being in the Civil War hospital, it switches to this very vibrant blue, which was just the opposite side of the fabric. The fabric has 2 different sides. And that was a sort of favorite moment. In the 5th episode, she's got this really beautiful embroidered jacket ensemble that she wears to the craft quilting bazaar. Knew that that room was going to be full with all these patterns and colors, and there's a lot of brown in those quilts. So I wanted something that was really going to stand out. And so we put her in a solid and in this really beautiful green. So that's a favorite. And then of course at the end of the season, I think I can talk about this because it is in the trailer for the Emily's famous white dress makes an appearance in the final episode of the series, and that was a real joy to put together. And that was something that started from my very first visit to the homestead. Jane and I talked about clothes, and she said, the only thing we have is this replica of the famous white dress, right? So that there was something that you guys had. It starts with me coming to the museum and seeing the white dress, being really moved by it, but thinking it was never going to be part of the show. And then I got the script for the final episode and was really excited to see that it was going to finally make an appearance. So I immediately called Jane and I said, what can you tell me about the dress? And I guess that the replica was made prior to Jane's tenure at the museum, right? I think for a period of time, the real dress was on loan from, I think, the Amherst Historical Society, right? And it was on display. And then I think smartly was taken off display and stored in a safer way. And a replica was made. And we found that there was a woman commissioned to take the pattern off of the dress, but we were able to reach out to her, and she provided us with the pattern that she had taken from the dress. And then we also reached out to this company in England that had been commissioned to make a replica to weave a replica of the fabric and the trim. And so this, I can't take credit for any of this because Jonathan Nipsher, who is the made-to-order assistant on the show, he's the one responsible for all of the things that we build. He really sort of took over and did all this investigating. And so we got the pattern, and then we reached out to the company in England, and lo and behold, they had about 8 yards left. And I think this was like 20 years ago that this all happened in like the 90s, and they still had about 8 yards squirreled away. But we weren't sure that 8 yards was going to be enough. Typically we buy about 10 to 12 yards for a dress, but this was a later period and the silhouette was a little slimmer. So we thought it might work, so pass up. So we bought it, we had it sent over. We also tried to get the trim that was replicated, but that company in New Jersey has since gone out of business. So we weren't able to do that. So we knew we had to find some substitutes for that. And luckily we were able to find something very close locally. The fabric came, and the amazing tailor shop that we have on Dickinson, who makes all the clothes for Emily and the family, was able to eke it out. And so what you see on camera is something that's as close as we could have possibly gotten to the real dress, much because of the help of the Emily Dickinson Museum. So thank you.
The museum have been so incredibly fortunate to have received hundreds of costume pieces from the show, which are now in our possession at the museum. So just this week, we took 3 of those costumes and mounted them to see the full effect of the garments on the human form. And these are probably 3 of my favorite pieces.
Start with the one that's for Emily, the one in the middle, the white dress. So that one is from season 2. It's the one where she finally meets the real Frasier. And that sort of ghost that's been haunting her through the season. She sort of figures out who that person is. So it was very much inspired by my trips to the homestead. Every time I go, I spend some time out there in that garden. I spend time with the herbarium, which I think is so special. Her love of nature and flowers and has always sort of spoken to me. So we use a lot of florals in the show, especially for her. And this one I just loved because it gets white, which is sort of that reference to her famous white dress. And it has these sort of ghostly flowers, fun to think about in relation to the ghost of Frasier. And also it comes at this time in the season where, season 3 is all about her sort of having confidence as a writer and then like trying to figure out whether she should seek fame or not. And it comes in a sort of vulnerable time for her in this series. The blue-green plaid is something that Sue wore to her sort of the intellectual party was one of her salon where she's trying to seem sort of smart and bookish. I think she even put some glasses on as part of that. What I love about this piece is that, this time is time when, sort of ensembles or suits or dresses that had several different pieces that you could wear in different combinations started to come into play. Sometimes you would have one skirt, but a couple of different bodices. You might have a day bodice and something that felt a little more evening that you could pair with that same skirt. And in this case, there's a little sleeveless vest that you could wear with that little jacket. And then the sleeves, the little undersleeves, or even a separate piece. And those were designed to be easily removable and so that they could be laundered. So I love this piece because it comes from a real piece of research too. And it also has a sort of like military theme running through it, which comes, if I'm not mistaken, from sort of Zouave military, so the Zouave soldiers that are, I think, coming out of French North Africa, and they were and Turkey. I think there's some like the Turkish inspirations in their clothes, and that sort of inspired women's wear in the 50s. And that last piece is one of my favorites, and that's a dress that Betty wears to the Quilt Bazaar in season 3. Betty has a pretty big role in season 3, and she's the dressmaker of the town. And so everything about her needed to just be impeccably tailored and fit really beautifully. And the fabric is sort of big and bold, which is sort of something that happens in this period. The skirts get bigger and there's a lot of real estate to cover. And so you can have these sort of bigger patterns to fill in that space. And then one of the things that they did a lot was use bits and pieces of the fabric for decorative elements. So in this case, the bows on her sleeves and at the neck are taken from, a certain part of the plaid that was then put together to make these little bows. So it just felt like the perfect dress for a dressmaker going to sort of show her art. I have to also credit the unbelievably talented tailors who make these clothes. I mean, I am just a part of the equation. I sort of collect a bunch of things and throw them in the air, and they make these amazing things, which over and over again exceed my expectations. And that's really rare. I can't say enough about how amazing they are. I have this amazing team that includes a bunch of assistant designers who are helping create the designs. There's people running out to shop the fabrics and the trims. There's a whole team that fits background. There's a lot of background in the show, and then there's the amazing wardrobe crew who make sure everything is beautifully prepared, and they're watching for continuity to make sure everything is just perfect.
So our hope is that one day in the not too distant future, after the museum reopens, that we will ultimately be able to produce an exhibition with you where these incredible costumes are mounted within the houses at the homestead and the evergreens that comprise the museum. So I just would love to hear you speak about what that would feel like to you to see your work in these original spaces that were, occupied by the Dickinson family, by these characters who you spent so much time with.
The first, to have them have another life after the end of the show is really exciting and special. And then to have that life be at the place where it all kind of started is pretty magical. I mentioned that I've made several trips up there, and it really informed so much all of the work. And so to have these beautiful things that we've labored so intensely over the 3 years come back to have another life at the museum is really sort of magical. I can't wait.
Oh, thank you so much to Marina Parker and Jennifer Moeller, set decorator and costume designer for Apple TV's Dickinson. Their hard work has yielded truly beautiful and inspiring objects that we are so excited to be able to use at the museum to furnish our newly restored spaces and help us immerse you, our visitors, in Dickinson's life and times. And speaking of those newly restored spaces, the current restoration project will be bringing the homestead hallways, parlors, and the poet's mother's second floor bedchamber back to our 19th century period, as well as introducing critical environmental controls which are needed to protect the objects in our collection, and helping to pave the way for a near future restoration of the homestead's service wing and east addition, which includes the kitchen and the dining room. So those projects are in the near future. Before we hear from experts in the field about 3 elements of our current project, it's time for one more poll question. So this is going to get put up on the screen and we'd love to hear from you. For those of you who have been to the museum before, and those of you who hope to visit one day, what aspect of the new restoration are you most excited to experience? And you can see the options there for you. Maybe it's visiting the historic rooms, maybe it's seeing pieces that were made from original materials that were discovered during restoration. Maybe it's walking that path just wide enough for 2 who love. Let us know what you think. And while you're answering that, let's hear from just a couple of the hundreds of people involved in this restoration project at the homestead. First, we're going to hear from Bill, who discusses recreating Emily Norcross Dickinson's fabulous Brussels carpet that once graced the floors of the homestead parlors. Then we'll hear from Gina and Jeff, 2 of our project experts on discoveries made at the house in recent weeks as work progressed.
I'm Bill Nunn from Grosvenor Wilton Company, based in the United Kingdom. We're a small company and most of our work is for the historic house market or museums or palaces, places where houses want to have the original style of carpet. We obviously have a library of designs that go back some way, go back into the 1700s, late 1700s, and we can obviously research a design. We look in books, we look in museums, we try and find out what type of building we are putting the carpet into. We try and find out a little bit about the history. We were approached by textile historian Mary Lou Davis. She asked us to come up with some ideas for Brussels weave carpet, and the description was flowers flying over the floor. So we searched through our original design papers and we found a design of what we call now the basket of flowers, and that is what you're having. It's originally designed in 1843 and to my knowledge it's never been made since 1843. So this is a unique carpet for Emily Dickinson Museum. We found a design and I think it was love at first sight. We didn't need to go much further. And then when we discussed about colour, it was thought rather than try and recolor it for a modern day, it was probably better to use and match as closely to the colours on the watercolour point paper. And that's what we did. And the colours are quite bold. They're not for the faint-hearted, and I think they will, or they do look stunning. And they are true Victorian designs. The advantage of a Brussels, especially using a worsted yarn, you get very sharp pattern definition, and also you get tremendous brightness of colour that you don't always see in a cut pile. In the early days of jacquard weaving, the designs were created on a paper that all intents and purposes is a graph paper, and it's divided up into little squares, and the designer or artist painted them in by hand to create the design. The point paper for the basket of flowers is miniature painting, so it's 4 times smaller than the actual carpet, so it was quicker for the artist to produce, and that information then was transposed onto jacquard cards that go on top of the loom that create the design. Jacquards are cardboard strips with holes punched in it, and where there are no holes, or sometimes where there are holes, the design is created. It also helps the loom select the colours from the selector. So it's probably the earliest form of computerization. The jacquard has not changed one bit in the last, well, since we ever had jacquards, which is 100 and 200 years nearly. The jacquard hasn't changed at all. The only thing in today's world, you can have a computerized jacquard, which means that instead of cutting thousands and thousands of pieces of cardboard, you put it onto a disc and stick it in the loom and away it goes. So it means that we can do complex designs relatively efficiently nowadays without a pile of waste. All the point papers we have left, or copies we have, are all hand painted. So they're actually works of art. They are watercolors. They stopped painting probably in the mid 80s when computer CAD design took over. And obviously we now use computer aided design all the time. There's no watercolors or painting anymore, which some say is a pity, but it's a lot quicker and means we can change colors, change things much quicker, and create complex designs in a fraction of the time it took to do by hand. Then once we get the yarn in and we get it all approved, it has to be wound, put onto the loom and woven. The actual weaving for the carpet is probably less than 10 days. But then once it's been woven, it goes through a process called picking, which is where a skilled young lady repairs any flaws in the carpet, pulls out any stray tufts, anything that may need looking at, she deals with. Then it goes to finishing, where the carpet goes through a steaming process, which pulls out any fullness in the fabric. And then before we roll it up to deliver it, it goes through, not in your case, but in if it was a cut pile, it'd go through shearing. But I mean, the Brussels doesn't need to be sheared. So it's quite a long process, and it is still in this day and age extremely skilled. I mean, a weaver back in the day would have had a 5-year apprenticeship. So, nearly as long as a doctor or an accountant. Grosvenor Wilton is one of the last remaining fine pitch Wilton weavers left in the world. There's, to my knowledge, there's like 4 of us left in the world, and that's it. Without those 4 companies, these beautiful Wilton carpets would not be able to be recreated. So it's vital that people understand that we need your help to keep us going, because only us now left in Britain doing it. So it's very important.
Board that's on the outside. Gina Blinas, and I am a project manager and building conservator with Mesick, Cohen, Wilson Baker Architects in Albany, New York. First, we start to look at the evidence that we can see, and we can determine that the period of the staircase as it exists dates to the colonial revival period, and that is the Park period in 1916. We can tell that this is not of the right period for Emily Dickinson. And we began to take a look harder at the evidence. We thought that the entire staircase was later period, dating to 1916. But upon closer inspection, we start to see evidence that shows us that there were a different riser and different treads than what's here now. And we were able to determine that the skirt board that's on the outside face of the stair is actually original to the 1855 period. The balusters and the newel post that was here, the newel post actually came down and swept around into a circle, and the balusters are all of the colonial revival period. We were able to find original balusters in the garage, and we have 90% of the balusters that we need to reconstruct the staircase. The treads had all been slightly modified, and the height of the risers were all changed to allow for the floors to be risen with the modern strip flooring that was installed in the 1916 period. That meant that every single riser needed to be incrementally raised, and new treads were installed. We found evidence for the treads up above at the round part of the skirt board. We have the original balusters, like I said, and with wood species analysis, we were able to determine that they are black walnut. The black walnut balusters have a stained finish on them and a varnish, and so that helps us to understand what the finish would have been like in Emily's period. Now we're going to take new black walnut and recreate balusters to match the originals. And then those will also be stained and finished so that they'll blend in together. The intent is for the old and the new to look exactly the same. What is most exciting for me is every time I come here is finding new information and new evidence that points to what was going on during Emily's lifetime. That for me is a puzzle, and I enjoy looking for the evidence, trying to interpret that evidence, and then determining what period it came from. So that is really the most exciting part. There is so much information here that is covered over and hidden underneath modern finishes, and that as we slowly strip away that modern 1916 period, we're uncovering more and more of what belonged in Emily's lifetime.
My name is Jeff Baker. I'm a principal partner in the firm of Mesick, Cohen, Wilson Baker Architects out of Albany, New York. When we came here about 15 years ago, we started out working on a master plan for the entire museum. It was actually shortly after the house next door was obtained by the museum. And it's been taking many years, but we're finally here working on the homestead. Restoring a feature like this actually takes quite a bit of work. First, we just look at it stylistically. We try to determine, is it right for the period, what we call the period of significance for the project. In this case, the period of significance is about Emily Dickinson's death, about that time in the mid-1880s. And when we look at a fireplace like this, we can see stylistically that it actually dates pretty much from the 1850s. So the first question is, well, was it still here in the 1880s, and has it been rebuilt in some way? So we're able to actually look at it stylistically and then go back and look at all the little pieces and parts, and almost immediately we can tell this whole fireplace had been at one time disassembled and then put back together again sometime in the early 20th century. And so the first thing we want to do is start doing little probes, and the first thing we did here is a probe at the hearth and a probe at the side of the fireplace, and sure enough we can tell that the entire hearth had been lifted up because the floors in the rest of the house had been lifted up, and we can tell that the moldings had been removed and put back. So something funny is happening here. So that led us to investigate further, and now here we are in the construction, and we're able to determine that actually a lot has happened here on this fireplace. There's a very long and complex story that all of this masonry tells us. This has been a real, it's been an exciting morning. This is the first I've seen this taken apart, and what we're seeing here is actually at least 3 periods of construction. And so if you look very, very closely, this brick jamb, what they call a brick jamb, it has what they call a splay jamb. See the angle on the jamb. And that normally is associated with, it first started coming out in the early 19th century. And so we started looking at that. We started looking at the fact that there was paint on here. You see there's actually a paint, what we call a ghost, where the paint ends, and there's some sort of soot on here. But this comes up and it ends kind of right about at this point. So we know that this came after this. And then we also noticed, if you notice this window here, this is actually what we call a sash door. It's kind of a French door. We know that this was put in the 1850s. And so if you look very closely, this jamb has been cut back in order to put this molding in. So this house was originally built in what we call the Federal period. It would have been about, about 1811 to 13. And we know that the jamb was cut back since that was built. So now we're pushing this into the 1850s. We also know that in this area here, you see this tube that was put in here. Well, that wasn't there, but they had to create a deeper flue. Well, that's when they put central heating in the house. And so now we have 3 different periods of significance, or periods, if you will, layered, right, all within this masonry. So this masonry over here dates from the early 20th century. This masonry here dates from the mid-19th century, and this masonry here dates from the early 19th century. So using this information, we're able to really reestablish what Emily Dickinson would have seen. We found out that there was a cement, if you will, concrete hearth on top of the old hearth, and we're able to pull that right off, and there's the original hearth right in underneath it. Along, even carved out, we have what we would have called the plinths for the fire piece, that the fireplace marble fire piece that went over this chimney piece, what they call. And so we can actually see the outline of that. So there's a tremendous amount of information here that now we've substantiated pretty much what this looked like within Emily's lifetime. And in this case, for example, all the bricks are very thin bricks. They're only 2 inches high. And so we've been able to find other thin bricks around the property, actually, that we can reuse and rebuild this hearth back in here. It also takes some skills on the part of the mason and the craftspeople that are working on this project. We're very fortunate to have some really good craftspeople that have worked in this house and are working on this house. And so we can take those old materials and we can take the new materials. We're also using old mortars, things like that, that matches the original mortars. So in that way, it'll look exactly the way it looked during Emily's time. Emily spent a lot of time in this house, and this was, in a sense, her world. And for us to rediscover that world is a tremendous excitement for me and for us, I think everyone working on the team. We don't know how it inspired her during her writings, but we know that in some way this was something that that she lived with every day. It couldn't help but sort of be infused in her. When we first walked into this house, I have to say, everything was covered over. The floors, the walls, the ceilings, everything's covered over. And we thought it was kind of hopeless. You know, how are you going to possibly know what Emily would have known? How do we do that? And it turns out that all the materials are originally there. It's just under these different strata of later materials. And so working on this project is a real thrill, because here today, even this morning, we found out this information that we didn't know before. That gives us a great deal of confidence that we can put it back together again in the same way that that Emily would have known.
Oh, thank you so much to Bill, Gina, and Jeff for their hard work and expertise. If you enjoyed these behind the scenes peeks at the restoration, you might visit our website to find the recordings of programs that we ran this summer and fall, where we dived even deeper into other elements of this work. We're going to put the link in the chat for you to be able to find that. And so now let's see what you said about our second poll here. So I'll share the results with you. Everyone is just so excited about the idea of visiting historic rooms with original and antique furnishings that immerse you in the material life of the Dickinson family. I don't blame you. We're all so excited about that too. And you know, again, we're able to do that even better now with the help of this incredible gift from Apple TV and the Dickinson Show. So I'm going to stop that, and now we're actually going to share one final poll with you today before we kind of reach the end of our program. So this poll is going to ask you about something I hope we all have strong opinions on. So at the end of our in-person birthday programs, if we were all gathering today, we would be eating cake together in the Dickinson Homestead dining room. It's tradition for us to serve, usually we serve the coconut cake at that program. So today we invite you to choose your virtual slice from our menu. What would you want to eat today with us? So while you're answering that, we're going to hear from Jane again. We're nearly at the end of our time together. So before we conclude with one final kind of celebratory toast, back to Jane Wald, Museum Executive Director.
Oh, thanks again, Brooke. This has just been such a wonderful birthday party, and it's been just extraordinary to share it with all of you. You know, during these long months of almost constant adjustment to our unfamiliar conditions, one of our really great joys has been the opportunity to share our regard for Emily Dickinson in community like this one, a global community, and one that is deepening its relationships with each other. I mean, just look at the chat. It's just been so wonderful to watch the conversations unfolding on so many different topics. But I want to thank you all for celebrating with us the great power and legacy and continuing relevance in our world today of Emily Dickinson's poetry, and importantly, the example of her life and how she navigated what her choices and constraints may have been. and on this, her 191st birthday. So many of you who care about Dickinson have been so very generous with your time and interest in the museum and our programs during what I'll now call our remote time, and also truly generous with your gifts to support this work. I feel that I should adopt some of Emily's language to express our appreciation. It's one of her most, I think, affecting expressions of appreciation and gratitude. Gratitude is not the mention of a tenderness, but it's still appreciation out of plumb of speech. After this program, we at the museum will continue our unending appreciation, sometimes out of plumb of speech, but right now, I don't want our appreciation to be still at all. We are just so grateful to all of you for your support, to donors who can't be with us today, to Marina and Jen, Bill, Gina and Jeff, to Elena, Ella, Anna and Adrian, to Apple TV and WIP Productions. Most of all, to you. We are eager to welcome you back to the Emily Dickinson Museum in spring 2022, when we can thank you in person. Brooke.
Well, thank you, Jane. I am pleased to report, I'm going to share the results of our poll here. It's a big relief to me that when we serve cake at next year's birthday celebration, we won't have to begin the prep weeks in advance to make Emily Dickinson's black cake. Though it was very close, you will see we had 38% of you voted for coconut cake, 37% for black cake, and a shocking only a quarter of you are interested in the gingerbread. All of these are actually, I can attest, very tasty recipes. If you are interested in Emily Dickinson as a baker, we do have a wonderful book that I believe have for sale on the museum's website right now, where you can learn more about her as a cook and a baker and actually make some of her recipes. So thanks for weighing in there. And now I'm going to bring you our final segment of this celebratory day. We have members of the cast of Apple TV's Dickinson reading a poem for us, and then followed by the birthday song with the staff of the Emily Dickinson Museum.
Hi, everyone. We are from the TV show Dickinson on Apple TV+. And we wanted to get together for Emily Dickinson's birthday this year and read one of our favorite poems of Emily's, Because I Could Not Stop for Death.
Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality.
We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility.
We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun.
Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill. For only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle.
We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground.
Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity.
Happy birthday, Emily.
Happy birthday, Emily.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Emily. Happy birthday to you. Happy 191st birthday, Emily Dickinson.
We had a good time singing happy birthday together. Well, friends, our time has drawn to a close. I hope you feel from what you've heard today, you feel the truth of our situation here with Emily Dickinson, which is that we are learning more about her every day from our work at the museum, from each other, from the way that we all are impacted by her legacy and her words. So even while we're learning more about her, Dickinson, of course, did write to a friend, Mabel Loomis Todd, "Maturity only enhances mystery, never decreases it." So it has been an amazing afternoon with all of you, celebrating this mysterious but enduring poet whose words have brought us so much. I hope that you are as excited as we are about these changes afoot at the Emily Dickinson Museum. On behalf of all of us at the museum, I want to thank you for sharing in our passion and inspiring us to continue our work at the museum. We can hardly wait to greet you when you come to visit us next summer and beyond. Till then, we do hope that you will continue to keep it up with our virtual programs and our restoration work. To learn more, to see a recording of this program, or to make a donation in support of free programs like this one, you can visit us at emilydickinsonmuseum.org. And if you can't get enough of celebrating Dickinson's birthday, you might like to check out a Zoom program being thrown by our friends at Harvard University's Houghton Library, which begins in just a couple hours at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. You can hear from a distinguished roster of contemporary poets who will share their favorite Dickinson poems, including our headliner from this year's Tell It Slant Poetry Festival, Tracy K. Smith. So once again, from all of us at the Emily Dickinson Museum, we want to wish you a very safe and peaceful and happy holiday season. Thank you for everything that you've given us this year, and take good care of yourself and each other. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.